Is when it comes to child support really is governed by the jurisdiction of where the child is. So in Mary's case, for example, she was originally in Barrie, because that's where the kids were, and then Burlington, where the ex-husband was, and then in Milton, where the kids are now. So first of all, the whole issue of why is Mary all over the map, it's because the court that services that community is the court that has the power to make a decision. In Mary's case, it's interesting because there are two children, and so she went from a situation where she was collecting child support from her ex-husband for the two kids to the point where one child is with one parent and the other child is with her. That's what we call split custody. And then the question becomes, well, who pays who? If there's one child with each parent, some would think, well, logically, there shouldn't be any child support paid. So if the question is simply put, Mary, I've got a child who's living with me in Barrie, and I want child support for my child who's living with me. The answer is, to the question, which court do I go to? The answer is the Barrie court. Suspended simply means the order still exists, but nobody is acting on it. It's just put in a state of suspension. What you would probably want to do is, wherever this order or court file is sitting, you want to make a request to have the file transferred to the Barrie court. That way the judge who then has to deal with this case could look at the history of the litigation and say, oh, this is what happened in the past, and this is what I'm going to do from today forward. But the question of jurisdiction, the answer is where the child resides, and the answer in your case is Barrie. As for these other courts, there may be documentation or a court file sitting in other courts, and you need to get those in front of the judge that's going to make a decision. Mary's question about the Family Responsibility Office, which for the other viewers who may not know this, is the collection agency for child support. So whereas before Mary's ex-husband was paying child support for two children, when one of the children moved over, he didn't want to pay child support for two children, which is for obvious reasons. He didn't want to pay child support for one child that's not living with his ex-wife. So what they had agreed to do was to suspend the enforcement of child support, which means that the collection agency, which is the Family Responsibility Office, stopped collecting the support from him. It's going to have to be renegotiated or reordered. The word renegotiated means Mary's ex-husband would agree to paying the child amount for one child living with Mary. That's if he agrees. And then they can fill out some forms and do this over the counter, as opposed to having to challenge this in open court in front of a judge and make argument and wait for a ruling. But if he doesn't agree to pay the child support for the one child amount that is living with Mary, then Mary would have to go in front of a judge in the Barrie court and say, look, back when we were apart, the two kids lived with me, then the son moved over to dad, and then we suspended the order. But now, this is what the situation is. So I've got my daughter living with me, she's with me in Barrie, I need child support for the one child amount, and by the way, we need his financial disclosure to determine how much child support he needs to pay. And if he doesn't give us the financial disclosure, the judge can make an order in his absence.